Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Mazza, percussionist, drummer, and artistic director of KoSA Music, inviting you to listen in conversation with friends, artists, professionals, and experts in our music world and beyond. And don't forget to subscribe. It's free, and you get a lot of inspiration. And today I have an incredible opportunity to speak with a friend for many years. Some people say an old friend, but not that old. A friend from many years, and finally we get to talk about shaping your journey. Gordon Gottlieb, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Always, Aldo.
And well, before we start on this conversation of shaping your journey, just tell us where it all started, just in the beginning, as a launching pad. Where was that launching pad for you? Where was that fire that first ignited for you?
My mama's belly. That would be Brooklyn, New York. Grew up there, post World War II. It really makes me seem old now, right? A divorced family. My dad left when my brother and I were very young, so raised by a single mom. So she was the inspiration. She was the guide, and thank goodness for someone like that. She was so outside of her generation in so many ways, I mean, really forward thinking, a creative, a dancer. So She understood what it means to be communicating and living your life. And that's what she instilled in me and my bro from a very, very young age. I'll put it like this. I mean, this is the type of mom we had. Midnight, school night. She would grab the two of us and we'd go out onto the street in Brooklyn, right? Lots of, small streets, tree-lined apartment buildings. And she'd join our hands together and we would go leaping through the streets, right? Nobody there. Everyone's asleep. And we just go moving, running through the streets. That was our mom.
Beautiful.
Lucky us. And
when did you start playing, though?
I always wanted to hit something, but it was piano. She was, she had, she had a really smart dad and helpful dad, old school, came here from Russia and got her a piano. And so there was a piano in our living room, and that's where my bro and I started. Probably 8 years old, something like that, taking lessons. My brother is a world-class pianist. He stayed with it. I went rogue. I thought I got to do drumming here. Actually, I'm going to drop a name on you now. David Mamet, the great playwright and auteur and film director, etc. I did a bunch of movies with him, and we had a convo. We had a conversation about this kind of stuff. And it was like being in a Mamet play, because, he's, if you know his rhythms, very second, very, very quick. Right? The mind is moving like this. So there I am, I'm in a Mamet play with Mamet. It's really like that. And he says to me, how did you become musical? And I said, I laid on the floor under the piano when my mom played. And I said, how did you become verbal? And he said, family spoke at dinner.
Interesting.
But it was like, It was very quick. And that kind of, in a way, summed it up. I mean, this was a conversation. I remember walking upstairs, back to, after a break, back to a recording studio. And it was just like that. And It's really true. I would lie on the floor of our living room underneath that piano while she played.
Wow.
Just drowning in that sound, taking that sound in. So, family spoke at dinner. We spoke at dinner too, actually, I have to say. So, forming a sentence was important for us as well, definitely for her. And that was a huge influence. And at the end, when you asked me, what do you advise students to do? This is part of what it's going to be. I'm already preceding this, right?
Right.
About developing yourself, about developing awareness and developing your senses, and not just sonically.
Yeah, and also being part of the situation, not just necessarily a bystander.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's good to be a bystander, but if you're coming to the table, you want to bring something to
Yeah.
the table
Oh
yourself.
man, isn't it true? And you got to know what that is. And you say shaping your journey. Well, this is how is it going to be shaped, right?
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating. I mean, it's all about the detours for me. If I think about it, all the detours.
Yeah,
And I know for you too, Aldo. I mean, of course, we share a similarity that way about the detours that help shape us, right? The stuff you didn't see coming,
oh yeah.
you
Oh
know,
yes.
the
And
forms you didn't see coming, the styles you didn't see, right?
I mean, I mean, we've been really lucky in that sense that you're paying attention, right? And then all
Yeah,
of a
yeah.
sudden something happens, and then you go that way, and you go that way. But as you're expanding, you remember some of the themes we used to have at KoSA, because you came to KoSA for years in Vermont, our project there, and you're part of
Happily and happily. Mm,
part of the family. And I mean, it was the themes that we would come up with. It's shaping your world. It's about time. For years, each year would be a different theme, because it's just that's the whole meaning is creating and shaping your world. At the end of the day, when we came up with the Yola and I were
mhm,
sitting, breaking our heads, what should we call it? And it just took
mm,
time to put it into perspective. But that was it. Life and
yeah.
then shaping your journey, because that's what we do. There is no coincidence.
No, no, for real, for real. I mean, there's so many spokes this goes out to, really, if you think
And
about it.
I mean, you're a real good one at this one, because for most people I know, and I know a lot of people, but I could say, so, you
Come
know what
on.
I mean. I didn't mean like I know a lot of people.
You?
No, no, I didn't mean that. I mean, I know a lot of people, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some great human beings and great musicians, of course, of all kinds. But you're one of those that has been like everywhere, has done everything, and turned every corner. I mean, let's back up a little bit. I mean, you're a
Mm,
percussionist, classical percussionist, playing with the Philharmonic, New York Philharmonic, right? Along with Arnie Lang,
yep.
our our tremendous long lost friend, Arnie Lang. But you were in that orchestra for a very long time, right? This is on your classical side. I know where all about this,
Yeah, of
because
course.
it's like you can't make up your mind, so you do it all,
Well,
right?
that's where I thought it was going to be, exclusively, right? I mean,
Right.
recall as a junior high school kid, I guess they call it middle school now, going to the Brooklyn Academy of Music, which is Sark Carnegie Hall in Brooklyn, and hearing the New York Philharmonic. And that little guy behind the timpani got my attention. I said, "Oh man, this dude! Wow, look at the fire! Look at the
Yeah.
precision! And look at the sound! I mean, he totally fascinated me." And I thought, I want to do that. I wasn't so bold as to say with that band, with that orchestra, but damn, I think I want to do that. I kind of like that. But flash forward, and studied with Morris Goldenberg first in Brooklyn, because that was recommended. When my mom smartly called Julliard, "What do you think we should do with this kid? He wants to play drums and all." So started first with Arnie Goldberg, who was a student of Saul Goodman's and Morris Goldenberg, who was a wonderful guy, great first teacher to have. And in Brooklyn,
Wow.
recommended Morris Goldenberg, studied with him at the pre-college of Julliard, which led to the upper school, the so-called University College and the conservatory, and that led to Saul Goodman. And there's that guy I was ogling at as a little kid, studying with that dude. So he was the main influence. And I thought, this is what I want to do. And then he recommended me finally, as a young kid, to play extra and sub at the Philharmonic. And I go, oh my
Wow.
God, what a thrill. Leonard Bernstein, first concert. And then, that led to so many other things, but it started with all that. The journey began with playing with those dudes and going from Mr. Goodman, Mr. Goodman, to finally his insisting on my calling him Saul. And that's when
Okay.
I knew, holy man, the transition has come. Like, wow, this is it.
Yeah.
He suddenly it's Mr. Saul. Suddenly I'm working with Saul, and not to mention Arnie Lang, not to mention Buster Bailey, not to mention Walter Rosenberger. I mean, that was
Wow.
my nest. You know,
Like
Arnie and I
you
became brothers. I mean, Arnie
yeah.
and I really became brothers, but the the other two are really family to me, Buster and Walter, both.
The
And
guys who set the
Saul,
standards. Yeah.
iconic, right?
Exactly.
Anyway,
Exactly.
so this is before Detours. I mean, well, I shouldn't say before; it was during.
During detours, yeah. The beginning of detours. Because
It's funny what happens at a school, at Juilliard. I mean, it's not just the so-called classical um, conservants. There's a lot of stuff happening there. There was a jazz department before there was a jazz department, or jazzers. And there were
okay.
people, certainly in the percussion department who were doing a lot of stuff, including playing Broadway. So I would sub on Broadway for them. So I got
Okay.
my feet wet early on playing, promises and applause. And stuff came from that, being heard in the pit, sight reading sometimes. I actually had to sight read some shows, bail some friends out. And, some musicians in the pit who happened to be contractors said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" And, I got this thing. So, sessions came out of interesting places. So I have, Juilliard and my colleagues to thank. So students, don't piss off your colleagues, all right?
Very well
Leave the
said.
stuff.
Yeah. No, no.
Anyway, it really is true. I mean, so much of my life got shaped by going to that building, I have to say.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, it was two buildings ultimately, but anyway.
And then all the people, of course. I mean, Miles Davis was also at Juilliard. I mean, there are all
He
kinds of
sure
people
was.
who went to
He
Juilliard,
sure was. He
and
studied
that
with, he studied with Bill Vacchiano, the first trumpet. Incredible. I got to
right.
play with too. Wow. Lucky me to hear that sound live. Yeah, Miles would sit on his trumpet case, apparently. He didn't want to sit in a chair. There are a lot of stories I heard about all that. I won't go into it. But
Right.
anyway, yes, he did. He was a student there.
Right.
But then he
And
said, he went to the University of, 52nd Street.
yeah.
Well,
Oh yeah.
how
That
Miles
was
described it, right? I mean,
and then
wow, what a scene. But, so much got spoked out from colleagues around me who were doing a variety of styles and situations. And I jumped into a lot of those. So I guess it's about your attitude, obviously, right?
yes.
I didn't expect any of that. I didn't know that I wanted to groove, and then I just, recall playing with the Juilliard Orchestra, let's say, which was a thrill beyond. Jean Morel, an incredible conductor, one of the best years I've ever, still to this day, ever encountered, ever.
Really?
Incredible year.
Okay.
Amazing musician who was, by the way, played Eastward Soldado Stravinsky. He played the premiere, by the way. He was a percussionist. Incredible, right? Anyway, so I remember playing a concert, and, I did, there were a bunch in a year. And then after, there was usually a party of some kind, and it might be, at somebody's crib. It might be, down in, the cafeteria of Juilliard, whatever. But I can recall being at a party or several parties after a concert, still with my white shirt and, a tie hanging off. And the music that was playing was not going to be Mahler or Mozart or Beethoven or even Burial. I mean, it was going to be probably some funk or some rock or jazz or something. It was other stuff. It's always other stuff. And I was listening to that other stuff and saying, damn. And I didn't even think maybe I could be playing that. Maybe that could be me. I can be playing that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't just be passive, as you just were saying, right? About, the bystander
Sure.
and listening to it played by other folks. maybe I could be. But anyway, all these paths led to my actually going into recording studios, recording, meeting other people, and I won't go through the laundry list of credits,
Well, your list
but
is
how
your list is
lucky.
so long. Your list is so long, Gordon. I mean, it's pretty incredible. I mean, it's beautiful to to think back that you've had the opportunity of playing with all those people, from Michael Jackson to Miles Davis, Steely. I mean, Steely Dan. I mean, you did a lot with Steely Dan.
I did 4 albums, yeah.
Yeah,
That could be its own interview, Frank.
yes,
Speaking
but
of great years, I was thinking, on the so-called classical side of Jean Borel and Pierre Boulez, maybe the
yeah,
finest years I've ever seen. Like periods, like mic drop, period. But I'll tell you what, those dudes, Donald Fagen, Walter Becker. I told her, I said, you're the Boulez of rock, pop, jazz. I'm telling you, man. I mean, those years, oh my God. So they were intimidating to a lot of folks. Some musicians left the studio crying, man, because they heard every damn thing. But we got on so. I mean, it was just, we were made for each other, I guess I have to say. Because they love. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the first things I said to them was, Kathy Berberian. There's a tune they did called "Your Gold Teeth" from the set 1974, 5, 6, something like that. And I remember listening to that album then,
okay.
which had that. I can't remember which album, but anyway. I couldn't believe it. Like, even Kathy Berberian has a roulade she can't sing, was the lyric. And I'm
Okay.
thinking, holy, these guys. No, Kathy Berberian was who, I mean, just, quickly, incredible, singer of new music who was Luciano Berio's wife for a time, and his muse in many ways, and just one of the most extraordinary vocalists we've ever seen. But really on the so-called classical new music side of the tracks. And I'm thinking, how in the hell do these dudes know? And I said it just like that, Kathy Berberian, and they said, we love Berio. I said, that's why we wanted you. I said, oh my God,
Nice, nice.
there's the circle, right? And of course, the circle's a piece of burial. But anyway, I'll make that little pun. But anyway, incredible. I mean, so these dudes, I mean, again, in terms of awareness, we could talk. I mean, with those dudes, we could talk film for hours and just like,
Right.
oh, I guess we should be recording. It's like that. Like, 2 hours just went by and we're talking about,
Yeah, I mean, they were
the French New Wave. I mean, it's just those guys were so aware. They well read beyond a belief.
right.
I mean, even the name of the group comes from, a book, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's salacious, but anyway, incredible dudes.
No, but you bring a good point, Gordon. That I mean, a lot of people. I shouldn't say a lot of people. Some people are just one track. They're on one track and they stay there, and they haven't gone outside their comfort zone or outside their personal interest. But the people who
Yes.
really become visionaries, who make all the difference, have got a much wider view. They've listened, they pay attention, they watch, they read, they
Without
know,
a doubt.
and
Without a
it's
doubt. I never see more aware dudes than those guys, I can tell you that. But it's part of what I would say. Again, you just probably should wait to the end with the advice column. But if you want to work, as drummers, percussionists, timpanists, whatever we do, marimbas, triangulists, whatever it is, we do. We're probably going to be working for the most part with other people. We're going to be collaborative musicians. It's like that, probably like a soloist, right? Not, most of us probably will head that direction. We're going to be collaborating, meaning you're hanging with people, meaning that you got breaks. What are you going to talk about? What do you talk about? I can tell you that in many of my recording situations, the contractor liked me and wanted me because they could talk baseball with me. I'm not kidding.
wow. Yeah,
Gigi
makes
knows,
sense.
Gigi knows baseball, which is one of my addictions. And then another one, is like a wine fanatic, and that's as I am. And so it's like that. Sometimes there are situations where they say, yeah, we want GG, man, because during the breaks we could talk about Bordeaux. So it's fascinating,
Yeah.
that way. But
And
you're absolutely right. I mean, it's just the dimensions that are going to make you more of a musician, than you might had you not gone and been curious
sure.
about so many directions. Meaning not to, listen. I can't stand on a soapbox and say you got to do this. You should listen to this, but read Carl Jung and his Book of Symbols. Read Yeats. Come on, read Joyce. I mean, it's you should be able to form more than a sentence. And
Yes.
yeah, well read, overrated. I mean, no one's reading anywhere anyway. But try. I come from a generation where we actually had books. I don't know. Anyway, I love Kindles now. I mean, I haven't picked up a paper book in years. I'm very happy to do it digitally, where I can adjust the lighting and don't have to
Right.
rely on an overhead light in a stupid airplane. So
Right.
yeah, life is a lot silkier in that sense. One of the better aspects of technology, let's say.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, read. Go to museums, develop your eyes, man. My ears taught my eyes. I have to
That's an
say,
interesting way to put it. Yeah.
yeah.
But also,
I went to
it
museums
makes,
and said, let me get this. Let me see how this connects.
sure.
That's where Carl Jung comes in.
Yeah, and
And
a lot of things are interconnected anyway. I mean, there's a cause and effect. Something happens because something else happened in a totally other field, and one inspires the other. It's like transferable knowledge, but in another
mm,
sector.
I
And
like
I
that.
think it makes a
Transferable knowledge.
difference.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, most musicians. I mean, for example, I mean, I've always seen things in 3D. When I have an idea. And I thought everybody was the same. I'd have an idea, like for example, the repercussion, what we would look like, what we would do, and the kind of, and everybody was of course in on it. I wasn't the sole responsible for everything, but
Mm.
we see it from the end, and then we work backwards. Same thing with KoSA. When I met Yolan, first thing is I said, now I'm ready to do this project, and I have it in my head. So I described it. I described it to Peter Wilder.
Uh,
Remember Peter? I was at his house in Vermont, and I said, Peter, now that I've done all of this, and that, I've met the girl we were engaged by that point. And I said, now
mm.
I'm ready to do this camp world class with all the top people on the planet have to be there 1 week in a college campus. And he said, what would it look like, the campus? And I described the campus. There's this place surrounded by mountains with a little lake. Um, and he's looking at me. He says, oh, you're describing Johnson State College. Never heard of it. I had
This is
never.
Carl. Speaking of Carl, you're taking my theory and running with it. It's all about how do
Absolutely.
we interpret these dreams.
Yeah.
You've dreamt it. You saw it. You saw it. You dreamt it. It already existed.
Yep. And I strongly believe in that thing these things come to you and they exist. And then so then you realize them. Then you work backwards. Okay, so what do I have to do? And then when we went to that college, Peter looked at me, we stopped, and he says, okay, there it is. There are the mountains. There's the theater. You remember that place. And there's the pond. You've been here before. I have not. So then we put that in motion. It's the same thing that we're doing in Calabria. I envisioned this place, this whole thing, and it's happening in Italy, in Calabria, exactly how I envisioned it. Some
Man,
things,
I'm so with you. So
some
with
things
you.
you can't, of course, because you have to wait for certain things to come to you. But the moment you have an idea, you
Yeah,
start
yeah.
from the end first, and it's like having the drawings for a house. You don't just build until you get a house. You have an idea. This is what it's going to look like. You may change your mind about what materials you use, but basically that concept start from that first, and then you build to make it work,
Yeah. How do
right?
you? Yeah. The journey again is that word. Yeah. How do you get there? How do you get to that dream? But
Yep.
you already dreamt it, so it's already done. It's just
Yeah.
it's almost redundant. how do we unspool this? You know? Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because
And I
yeah,
mean,
I've
and in your
experienced that many times as well.
sure,
Many times,
and I've seen you
many, many.
going, and I know you well enough to see this. You'd say you would be in Brazil for a long time, and here's this
Yeah,
classical percussionist going to Brazil and totally owning it, the whole Brazilian thing.
I well, there's a
You
whole
know what I
other.
mean, right? I mean,
Wow. Let's just put it like this: when I went there, it was waiting for me. It was just this. This was a home. We have to realize that large word, drummer, percussionist, timpanist, marimbist, triangulist, tambourinist, chimist. We can go on and on, right? But I'll just say as percussionist or drummer, just to simplify it. We have some decisions to make, and then once they're made, you have to have the humility to understand and accept that you may own some groove or culture and what it says and how it feels. And that was Brazil for me. That was my rhythm. I understood it completely in my body. Oh, there's that Yeats quote one more time. Oh, dance, oh, dancing body, bodies swayed to music, oh, brightening glance. How could we know the dancer from the dance? No one ever said it more eloquently about being your art, about it. You are that. You're not performing it, demonstrating. You are it.
you
So
are
that was
right.
Brazil to
Interesting.
me. I said, damn. I walked out of it. Yeah, uh-huh. Everything about it, everything about that culture, everything about what samba felt like to me, what what Bayonne felt. I can go on and on, and lucky me to play Carnival. Long, long, beautiful story, but and I can't say that it changed my life, but it changed my life.
Right.
It felt like again, it felt like a dream I'd already had. Yeah, I've been to the But the humility I'm talking about is to understand when you don't connect or own a groove or a culture's output. It's down to
Right.
the food also. And if we get started with food, we ain't talking about music anymore.
Oh, let's not talk about food. And
But it really is about that.
yet,
Like, there's some humility involved with all of this, because we're appropriating stuff all the time, particularly as a studio musician, which I did for so much of my life. Is where you're approaching a culture and its sound, like
right.
or appropriating depending on your point of view. But that happens all the time. Hey man, we want this to sound like this. We want this to feel like that. We want this to do this. We want this to do that. So I was laying, I was laying down Brazilian grooves over a lot of rock, pop, jazz all the time, especially when I would just come back from
Oh,
two
yes.
months in Brazil. I was just, overgrown with that. That was me. So I did that all the time. And, I remember, well, I have so many examples, but, I came back. I remember I played on an album of Grace Jones, and, it was very disco Euro trashy, but a lot of long sections where I could just blow. And
Right.
I could have taken a lot of different directions, but I took it to Brazil, right? And I was, like samba whistles and like probably put down like 15, 20 different tracks. And, and it was all overlaid. Grace said, "For taking this to Brazil. Yes, yes." So this happened to me a lot, where I had this
Nice.
culture embedded in me, and I would let it out
Sure.
in many different situations. But that's the beauty of recording, and I won't even start on what the studio is, but it involves basically endless numbers of styles. Some I didn't know at all. I could go on, man. One of the first movies I did with the Coen brothers, I did many with them, which was astonishing. Beautiful to work with those guys. Incredible. But I remember there was one that involved a bowdon, Irish bowdon. Um, and they asked, I'm the contractor for it, asked me, said, Gordon, did you play Bowdon? At that point, I did not at all. I think I never even saw one up to that point. This is way back, right? And my answer was, I will. Gordon, do you play Bowdon? I will. So I called Glenn Velez, who was a dear friend. We did many things together. I said, Glenn, help me out here, man. I need someone to teach me Bowdon like really quick. And he recommended someone, right? I'm an Irish person who played the Bowdon. And we got together, a couple of times, and came pretty quickly, I have to say, and I played Bowdon. But a lot of my life was like this,
Yes, yes.
where you're learning stuff on the fly and very quickly and, having to adjust. But, I love that. I love walking in his studios, not knowing what I was going to play.
Yeah.
This happened 95% of the time where I would walk. I had no idea what the style was going to be, really, it happens a lot.
Sure. But also, but that's because, Gordon, you are a musician. You're a sensitized musician. So you have the sense that what is musical, what works. I mean, just watching you playing a shaker was an art. And I remember once at KoSA, you did this to me. You were playing this shaker, and I made some comment because it was beautiful what you did. And you said, well, this is a shaker. I still have it, by the way. You gave it to me. The shaker that you were making those shakers.
Yeah.
You remember those?
Yeah.
Yes, I should have pulled it out. I still have it here. And I've used it a lot in recordings myself. It's just a nice balance, and
It is,
and you
isn't it?
control it.
Yeah.
Every time I use that one, I says, thank you, Gordon.
And you know what that was for, right? Pantyhose.
Yes, of course. The casing of the pantyhose.
Legs, pantyhose, these big the egg shape. I used that thing at the Philharmonic, believe it or not. It was loud enough. Well, I had different amounts to fill in it. So, I had hundreds of different shakers. But, some of that were pretty well loaded up. And I had these beads from, the center of town, the garment center. I wouldn't even go into different size glass beads, et cetera, et cetera. So I used everything, rice, you name it. But yeah, thanks. I'm glad this still works for you.
And the other things that you were really amazing, you were doing these improvisation classes where you don't know what you're going to play, of course. You don't know what instrument. You just walk in the room and you create a composition with whatever is around you.
Yes.
As it should be. It's like a
That was
conversation.
some of the most fun I've had at KoSA. It turned out that was the way to move there. In fact, I just hung out with 5 KoSA grads, if you will, in New York. Went out to dinner, and we were talking about just that. That was part of what we were talking about, and part of it involved lights on and off in rhythm. Even the light switch became part of these improvisations. Anyway, that was a move I kind of went to a long time ago. There was a set I did. I did a lot of drummer and percussion hangs at my loft. I had a couple different lofts in New York, so huge spaces. But there was one night where I'm telling you, every drummer, every percussionist in New York was at my loft. And the joke was, if someone dropped a bomb in my loft, there'd be no more rhythm left in New York. It would be like white. It was unbelievable. The cast of characters there. But we jammed, we played, and I mean, there must have been 50 guys. I mean, it was unbelievable, and ladies. But I remember incorporating the light switch then. That might have been one of the first times that I did that. But things were happening, and we had a groove happening, and I was doing on off, on off. And we were just howling, laughing, man. It was just so much fun, man. Unbelievable. We had some good times, I'd have to say. And Arnie was always at any of these things. By the way, right?
Yeah,
he was at everything, man. I mean, my bro.
He was everywhere.
He would go to classical hangs. He was at everything. I had a group called French Toast, for all the studio musicians.
Listen, French Toast. Let me introduce French Toast, because that's where I met you. Actually.
Oh, Oh,
Okay.
wow.
You remember? I
Remind
don't know
me.
if you remember this. It was Arnie who had invited me to go to he was teaching at Brooklyn, right? At the
Okay.
academy. He was doing a percussion day, a PAS day, a percussion day, or something like
Yes,
that.
yes.
So
Yes,
I
yes,
said,
yes. We played a few of
definitely,
those. That's right.
yeah. So I went, and you're playing French Toast, and Michel Camilo, and Dave Weckl,
And Anthony
and
Jackson.
Anthony Jackson on bass. I mean, I walked in and he said, unbelievable. So that's where you and I met. I remember it well.
Oh, wow. So in Brooklyn, you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
at that event.
Wow.
At that
That's a while
event.
back. Of course, I remember the situation, right? Holy cow. Well, that group, we never rehearsed. We were all too busy. But, we would play and, around town a lot. And I don't know. Anyway, long stories. Everything is, in speaking of interconnected, right? But that's,
Yeah,
I discovered Michel Camilo in Santo Domingo, in
in
fact.
Santo Domingo.
I found,
Okay. Okay.
and Peter Erskine and I discovered Dave Weckl, in fact.
Okay.
We were playing. French was playing at 7th Avenue South, great club in New York. The Brecker brothers owned,
Right.
and they lost a lot of money there, the Breckers. And when it closed, Michael famously said, "Well, that's the end of an era." An
Wow.
amazing club,
But
and I mean, everyone played there. It was so cool.
yeah, it was a great
And
place.
oh my God! So I remember on a break, Peter, well, we went to the Drummer of the Month Club. So anyway, it was Peter at that time. So Peter and I had heard about this dude, this drummer who was playing with this group, Night Sprite, right, named after a Chick Corea tune,
Chick Corea,
and it
right.
was only a few blocks away from where we were playing. So Peter and I, went a few blocks to hear this group, and there's the young Dave Weckl. And Peter and I looked at each other and said, "Okay, that's the guy." So, because Peter was about to leave, and we were on to our next drummer, which at some points were Steve Gadd. I mean, we went to Steve Ferroni. I mean, it was a lot of drummers, man. It was so much fun. Um, I talked, basically said, "You're coming with us," to Weckl, right? And so he joined in. And then, flash forward, 6 months or so, Chick Corea comes and hears us at McKell's, great club in New York. And he grabs Weckl, and the rest is history, right?
Right.
But anyway, look how how the lineage, works and all connects. But anyway, I was going back to French Toast. Arnie was a constant. Arnie would come to just every gig. He was
Wow.
so devoted to coming. He just had to come. But anyway, we heard a ton of different things. We'd go out to eat all the time. I mean, it's a long story with me and that dude. Miss him every day. But we toast him always. I have a group called the Manja Quartet, which is Joe Pissarro and Ben Herman and Marcus Roten, tempest of the Philharmonic, who, I guess you could say he replaced Arnie in the Manja Quartet. And, we're drummer,
Manja in
percussionist.
Italian
And,
is to eat. Just to clarify, mangiare means to eat. Manja is eat. Yeah. So just to clarify, in case people are watching and not knowing what that was about.
Grazie mille. so, so the Manja Quartet has been around for a while, and we go out to eat all the time, a lot of different foods, all over the place. And Arnie was, remember, loved it, loved
Yeah.
it. We went everywhere.
Well,
So we toast people, at these Manja dinners all the time, and we always start with Arnie.
yeah.
Who,
Well,
I still hang with his wife, in fact, Elizabeth. We go out to dinner. She's quite the foodie, by the way.
oh,
And
okay.
we
I didn't know
remain
that.
friends. We have remained very good friends. And, when we toast, I say, "To the Lang in the sky."
Yeah.
And
Yes.
she loves that. She likes that. The Lang in
Well,
the sky.
Well, he was so active, not just active, but he promoted everybody. And well, let's do this and let's do that. Right to the, I mean, he was
Yeah.
89, right? When he passed,
He went to
um,
90, actually. Yeah,
90.
he did.
Okay, but a few years ago, he had asked me, he said, Aldo, I want to do something and you can help me with this. I've been dreaming about this for a long time. He says, in 1934, the Varèse's ionization was performed in New York and Havana the same year. It
Town
was
hall.
premiered.
Right.
Right.
Town hall.
So he said, Aldo, I have to do that again. And he was doing that group from Ireland that was
Ireland, yes.
kind of coming
And
over every year.
Elizabeth just brought them in. She's
Wow.
continuing that.
Oh, nice. Well, anyway, his whole idea was I want to repeat that thing. So you can help me with Havana because I spent so much time there. So he said, I'm going to have that group play it in New York. We'll premiere it, and you can help me in Havana. And I said, perfect. So I actually scheduled it. I scheduled it in the festival in Havana. But then I said, wait a second. I came back from Havana. I said, Arnie, we have a little problem, and we have to do this fast because they don't have the score at the ISA, and they don't have
that.
yeah. But not just that. There are a couple of instruments. They don't have the two horn,
the sirens,
the two sirens that you need. They don't have the sirens, and there are a couple of other things. The sleigh bells. They didn't have sleigh bells. So I said, well, let's get this together. So this was funny. So we programmed, and I said, okay, I'm going to be at NAMM, and I'll have to get this music to them before you arrive. You'll do a master class for the students, and then we'll open the festival with this. We'll do a classical. First day of the festival will be a classical day, and the rest will be everything else. And so I said, well, they don't have the music. So I said, send me the music. But I was in Los Angeles, and I was doing some work with a pianist there. I was working in a studio. Joachim Horsley, Beethoven in Havana. Okay, he's known for his Beethoven in Havana thing, amazing stuff. So I said, Joachim, do you mind? Arnie's going to email me the score. Can we take a break, print it out, and I'll take it with me? No, absolutely, let's do that. And then I was meeting Horacio at NAMM, and he was going to take it to Havana to give to the school. So this was all timed, right? But at the time, Horacio didn't have a cell phone. He didn't like stuff. Now he has, but he didn't for the longest time. So I said, so how am I going to get a hold of him?
We were very similar in two different things. We have no driver's license, no cell phone. That was both of us for a while. I still don't. I have the driver's license, but I don't drive when I've had a cell phone for a while.
So we had to figure out how we met at NAMM. Okay, so we said, okay, we'll meet at such and such a booth. So we'll be crossing. Have you seen Horacio? No, not yet. But he's supposed to come at this time. I say, tell him I'm by and I'll come back. So we'd be crisscrossing. We finally met each other. I gave him the envelope. He took it to Havana. And then Arnie, he said, I'm going to send you the instruments, the sirens. I found two plastic ones that are really light, so you can take them. So he sent me those instruments, and I took those down. And so we're in the midst of organizing this. And of course, well, we never got to it.
Yeah.
But imagine that would have been amazing.
That was Arnie always, the dreamer. He wanted to interview everybody on the planet who played drums or percussion, and born before 1940. I mean, really, he wanted to preserve the history single-handedly.
Wow.
And it was a thing. It was a real thing for him. We have to preserve this history.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was so huge about that. He really was. Yeah.
And a great inspiration to everybody because he was just interested in everything and interested in the continuity, interested. And then you could sit with him and he became such an interesting person, right?
Yeah.
Always.
Well, that was the beauty, when we went out to dinner, man, we hit everything. We hit everything. I mean,
and you guys toured. You guys toured together.
That's where we're again coming round about what we were just talking about. where, you're not just, a single track, sonic person, right? I mean, I didn't know I was going to be a foodie or whatever. I hate that word, food enthusiast or, a wine snob, but here I am, you know, but it was easy to trace because on every, I traveled a ton, like happily. And on most trips, hey, you're going to go out to eat. It's about like, where are we going to eat? So, people I was touring with, whatever, is like, GG, where are we going to eat? I was a designated hitter, right? I'd be finding the spots, right? Because they knew I was doing my homework on that.
Right.
So, there's been a long obsession. And I decided at a certain point, you like the segue? About 10 years
Wait,
ago, I
but
decided to give my ears to.
before you jump off that because you played so much music. I mean, everybody from Tony Bennett to Sting. I mean, like everywhere. And besides all the Broadway shows that you mentioned, but all of these artists of all types. I mean, you played with them all. And then there were the movies. How many
About 200,
movies?
probably 200. And that's a lot for a New York guy. You know, I mean, my counterpart, I guess you could say, Emil Richards,
Amel.
on that
Wow.
other coast did thousands. I mean, to do in New York, to do a couple hundred was a lot. In New York, let's put it like this: on the left coast, it was movies and records, albums, right? What they used to call records, right? On the East Coast, we're doing jingles, man. We're doing TV commercials, albums, and some movie. So to us, we were like snobs on that. Studio musicians in New York was oh god, I was offered a movie. What that meant was that you're going to have to turn down a lot of jingle work.
That's right. Yeah.
Or,
And well,
like,
you did
oh
the
no.
remember the Shaft movie? I was in New York with you
Yes, I
at the
remember we
Sony
met up.
Studios.
We met up at that. That's right.
Yes, I
Shaft
came out.
2000. Yeah, I could date it because the name of the movie was Shaft 2000. Samuel L. Jackson, Steve Jordan was
Yes.
playing that. If you remember, Maxine
Yes.
Roach was
That's right.
one of the
That's where I met
violas
her.
in that.
Yes, and I had asked
And
if Max would come out to KoSA, and
I
then
remember.
yes,
I think I connected you with her, if I remember right,
yes,
with
yes,
Maxine
yes,
about that to talk to Max, who would have loved it, by the way. I'm sure
yeah,
he
and
would
that.
have loved to
Oh
do
no, and
that.
he was.
He would
There are
have
some
loved it.
people who needed to be in the KoSA environment, but some of them, of course, we
Yeah,
unfortunately didn't make it in time to bring him, including
yeah.
Ralph McDonald. By the way, you know, I
Oh man, Ralph was.
I had
Oh my
asked
God.
Ralph, and I said, finally, Ralph. He says, "Yeah, I'd love to come." So, and this was really really odd. So I said, "Where did I put his number?" And so I called Steve at LP, and I called him,
Uh-huh.
Steve, do you have, can I get Ralph's number from you? He says, no, no, well, why don't you just send him a card? And I said, what? He had just passed the day before. Ralph
Oh
had just
boy.
passed, and he was thinking I wanted to just offer my condolences
Oh
to the family. And
yes.
I said, oh, no,
It's so
no.
shocking. So
I'm,
shocking.
I
I
was
know.
like frozen with the phone. I said, oh, that's not true.
Ugh,
Wow.
I know. I know.
Anyway.
Yeah, he was one of those shocking, too much too soon type guys. I mean, I've got some stories about Ralph, and he was some
And you
piece of
want to
work.
share?
But huh?
And you
Say
want to
again?
share?
Well, there was actually a PAS. This is again, thank you, Arnie Lang, that we did a PAS in New York.
I was there.
Oh, you remember this?
Of course.
And New York was very difficult to do PAS in. We had the convention centers, and we just don't have that. It's just too spread out. It's very difficult to do. It's too congested. You don't have open spaces, to do that with a huge convention center. So he managed to make it happen, but probably in 10 different venues. It got a little crazy. But it was in this hotel ballroom, in this place, in this school,
Yes.
at this. And what we did was we set up a mock recording session. I don't know if you made that one.
Of
Did you
course,
make
I
it?
remember. I was there.
Wow.
I
Look
remember
at
that.
us.
Yes.
Man, you are everywhere. So I
You think I'm
remember it
one
was,
person, but
well, it was in a, very active recording studio, and, some busy dudes were playing it, and Ralph was playing percussion. I think Friedman was playing
David
vibes,
Friedman was there.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe Ronnie Zito, or
I
I
think it
can't
was Ronnie
remember.
Zito. Yes.
Andy Newman playing drums. So anyway, he was like some of the busiest dudes in New York. And I played the part of a jingle producer. And I happened to be wearing a suit because I was about to play a concert that afternoon with the American Symphony at Carnegie Hall. So I was going to run out. I had to run out of there. But anyway, there I was in the suit. And so I was kind of dressed for the part. And my role was to go on the talkback and say the sometime absurd instructions and non-musically designated
Beautiful.
instructions coming from these dudes. Could you play it more pink? Could you play it like, I don't know, more white? Could you do, I really couldn't describe it at all. So I came out with the nonsense like that, and everyone's screaming, laughing. But that was my contribution to that particular hang. But Ralph played that, right?
Yeah, I
And I
remember
remember,
it well.
people were talking about, people were asking about, like, how much money can you make? It got a little absurd, right?
Yeah.
But I remember this moment, like, how much money could you make being a son? And Ralph said, well, $300,000 ain't no joke. I would never forget that he actually said that. So back in 300 grand
Yes.
for a musician was like, are you kidding? Really? Wow.
No,
So,
I
but I
was
do
there.
remember that.
It's. I have to clarify. I had just started joined the group Repercussion, and the four of us drove down. Robert had a van at the
Oh,
time, so we drove down to New York, stayed at the
oh,
Taft Hotel,
wow.
and we went to this thing and drove down and back. Oh yeah, that was amazing.
Holy cow. So that was, an unusual event, to do a mock recording session
Yeah,
like that, with all the aspects, that you would see. And we
sure.
did it, I can't remember who was MD of that, but, some great arranger, set it up. And, really did it for real, like, fixing parts and transposing and doing whatever you had to do. And I was the producer, the
Yeah.
BS producer. But anyway, I mean, it wasn't always like that. I mean, you know, most of the time you really had somebody who knew what the hell they were doing, like
Yeah,
for
no, but it
real.
was.
But
I remember. I still very clearly that it was really well presented. Even though there was a lot of joking around all of this stuff, but I think everybody really got it. How serious it
oh,
has to be. Like
I
on the
mean,
button, you need this right away. The next take, and you only have like it's an hour. It has to be finished, done.
you
Right?
got a sense of the speed at which it happens, that the sight
Exactly.
reading that would occur. You're absolutely right. But in a studio, in an actual
Yeah. The real
recording
deal. It
studio.
wasn't just talking
I mean,
about it.
so
They were
in
doing
a
it.
really unusual. I mean, it was in 1976 or something like that. Is that right?
Mm,
It's a
78,
ways back,
78.
somewhere in there. 76, 7 or 8. Oh yeah, amazing. But
Woo.
anyway, that was Arnie. That was Arnie. That was
And
typical
I didn't
Arnie.
remember that he had orchestrated that. Beautiful. Ah, he was amazing. Arnie was,
Yeah,
he was the king.
yeah. We can. Wow, wow. Yeah.
But then,
here's to
so
here's to
you
you,
were
Mr.
going,
Lang.
yeah. I mean, we could speak for days about Arnie. We could speak for days about you too. But now you were talking about the jumping ship. Now this is interesting in shaping your journey. And this actually surprised me, Gordon. I'm
Uh,
serious, because you were one of the great percussionists who fit. You could put him anywhere, and it doesn't matter. It could be with Stravinsky, with Steely Dan, with Sting. It doesn't matter. He'll do it with Michael Jackson, whatever. And then all of a sudden, what'd you
mm,
do? I
yeah.
heard.
I
I
want,
said,
I know it's, I surprised myself, I guess, I mean, it was a confluence of activity that happened about 10 years ago, where my mom passed, and I was thinking about reshaping my journey. Uh,
Sure.
in
No,
anyway,
totally.
prior to that, and this kind of was an impetus to do that. But in many ways, she had not really smelled the roses enough. So in a way, it's a tribute to her. And but I had already been smelling too many roses, frankly. So I, uh, you know, what happens a lot in studio world in particular is that people will never say no. You're going to always be a yes person and accept every possible session because there's a little paranoia in there. Someone's going to Wally Pipp's my gig. And if you're a sports fan, you know that Wally Pipp was the one who got replaced by Lou Gehrig. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Well, so that became a verb. You got Wally Pipped. Anyway, the or adjective, the you know subject matter there is that you're going to be in a studio and basically never leave New York, right, or wherever you happen to be, right. In my case, in New York
Right.
City. So I was leaving all the time to go scuba diving. I all the time. I can't tell you how many times I would be packing. I have a car waiting downstairs. I would, have my stuff ready, my scuba gear, all the stuff I'm about to take to some island somewhere. Phone rings. Gordon, what are you doing right now, man? I got this Pepsi final, man. Hey, we got this logo for, and I'm thinking, we have this GE logo. Now, if you play a logo for a company as large as GE, it can pay you rent for 3 years. See, that's what I'm saying to you, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, well, love to do it, but you got a car where you're no, that's So I had to say no and turn down stuff all like that. I mean, it's just complicated life. When I went to play in Brazil during to play Carnival, I'd be staying for a month, maybe 2 months at a
Wow.
time. I'm losing. I could have seen it as, oh, I'm losing. I'm losing. No, man, it was never about that. It's never about that. So I was smelling them roses. I smelled roses for a long time, but this just kicked it in gear even more about 10 years ago. So I decided I'm going to give my ears a rest. Are you listening, students? Are you listening, professionals? I don't care who you are. You must give the ears a rest at some point. I was not one to wear earplugs. Too little, too late. Occasionally I would do it, but I really didn't for the most part. What are you going to do in a studio, man? Got phones on, right? Come on. So, you're adjusting, volume controls, and maybe in the early days you're relying on the mercy of the engineer, and
Right.
but you would get zapped, as we used to call it. And,
Oh,
headphones would be
yes.
flying. When you had too much lightning coming from the microphones to the earphone. Anyway, a lot of stuff. You're going to lose your hearing. Your high end hearing. We're goners for the most part.
Yeah.
How's your hearing, by the way?
No, mine is good. Mine is good. And I take care of it. I make sure I don't overexpose. I don't, I'm really careful.
This is
Certain
so
things I
important.
won't do, you know.
There you go. So I could have lost my hearing at Carnival alone, or in Brazil alone, because you're rehearsing in basically these enormous warehouse type spaces,
Right.
like airplane your size, with the sound smash. I mean, you can't
Well,
believe the volume. I
three,
never
four
worried
hundred people
bugs in
playing.
those.
Yeah.
Never worried about. You're playing for 10 hours straight. Come on. With everything you've got, blood, flowing off of your hands.
Right.
So, no, I did not do much to protect the ears. That's on me. But be that as it may, I decided I'm going to give this a rest, and I'm going to follow my impulse to just go around the world and eat and drink fine wine. Fine dining, as we snobs like to call it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I did
So,
exactly that. I mean,
yeah.
for many years now, I've been traveling around the world to eat. So I went around the world to scuba dive. I went around playing music, and now I go for food and wine, right? So I'll go to to Burgundy, just to Burgundy out, right, in France, right?
Sure.
I just go to a region and do tastings and dinners combination. So that's been a lot of my life now, for the last certainly 10 years. Well, I did it before, but now really in a concentrated way for about 10 years. Let's put it that way. So everywhere from San Sebastian to Lima, Peru, to Copenhagen. So it's a lot of styles. Again, here we go. Music translating and ear and eye teaching palette. This goes on.
Yes, yes, yes.
Senses, again, interacting as we were just talking about, right? That transference of senses, of transference of knowledge we were talking about, transference of palate and of senses, right? Developing your senses. In large cities, we tend to smash our senses down out of protection. I understand that. You need to do that to a certain degree, right? Where you're trying to just hear, right? You're just trying to keep your ears open and your eyes, right, and your senses and your palate. But most of the time, you're blocking out horrible aromas, shall we call it, right, or ridiculous amounts of sound. You haven't heard a sound here, right? And
No.
that's because I live in a really quiet, double-paned apartment building on the 27th floor, looking out at the Hudson River right now. So I've got a view. I've got quiet, and this is all that I want. I want quiet. So I'm really sound sensitive at this point.
Sure,
So when I hear, any disruptive sound, I jump and my friends look at me like, what's up with Gigi, right? My friends call me Gigi. I am that sound sensitive. I mean, it's like that. So P.S., but I'm listening to more music than ever before. So I'm discovering music all the time, right? When people say to me, Gordon, there's no good stuff. Well, you're not paying attention, I say to them. And I'll read them a list of, really? You haven't listened to X, Y, Z, Q? Really? Anyway.
But it's interesting. No, it's interesting, Gordon, because the first reaction, like for myself, that I've known you for so long, I'm saying, "Wow!" As a musician, I know if I decide to stop, like what would be going on in my mind? Why would I just suddenly like 100% stop and not miss it? So, wow, I would go out of my mind. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
I know. I always said the
right, which is
same thing.
the normal reaction, right?
I'm going to add on to that I have been teaching through all these years, right? So
Yes,
I actually said goodbye to Julliard also 10 years ago. That was an addition. And I loved teaching, by the way. I wasn't one of those who taught as an obligation, not at all. I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I loved it, but I did. I was teaching at Yale actually for 10 years, taught at Julliard for 23 years. And I loved it. I did. It actually snuck up on me. I didn't know when I first started teaching at Yale. Oh boy, 1980 something, 4, 5, 6. I laughed when they called. Really, you know what I'm up to, right? I said, yeah, that's where we want you, real world. Oh wow. Anyway, I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I ended up. And they wanted to put my name. My former students are going to really react if they hear this. But anyway, the school wanted to give me, my name on a little plaque to put on the door, Professor, Gottlieb or whatever the hell it was going to be. And I said, no, don't put that up yet, because I'm auditioning it, right? I'm auditioning this whole situation. Anyway, the year happened, and I really did love it. I said, okay, you can put the plaque up there now. I'm in. You got me, man. I am really loving this. But anyway, it was 10 years. It was difficult in some ways to get to it because I could only teach on Sundays.
Okay.
So I would tell my students, I hope you're not a football fan because you're mine on Sundays.
Of course.
That's what I used everything, all my students and, coaching and everything, whatever I did, But I did end up loving it. And then Julliard came along too, and I was teaching at both places for a while, which was really, really, really tricky. but I did. I kept that going, kept it, kept that balance going. But then I just said goodbye to Yale. I said, oh, I wish I could, but no. But so, I kept Juilliard going, and happily so. I mean, so I gave that up as well, gave up the teaching. So I shifted my life focus in every way,
completely.
went sonic to food.
Well, and that's interesting, Gordon, because those of us on the other side who have not stopped, and just the thought of stopping
No, I know,
is
I
a
know.
scary thing, because what would you turn into? What would you do? Well,
But
all of those questions. And here's a good one for you, Gordon. I mean, we have to respect that. Of course, obviously, if you get to that decision, and that's what you do, it's a complete 100% left turn or U-turn, not even U-turn. It's a
yeah,
complete
yeah,
other floor
sure.
moving forward. You say, well, there are reasons, and they are. I mean, I'm sure knowing an intelligent person would think it all through. But this is what I want to do, and then you do whatever you do with the same kind of passion, with the same interest, with the same.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
that's what's happened. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what's
and
happened.
and then you
Yeah,
have to respect that,
you get it. You get it.
of
I've
course.
applied that amount of passion
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean,
I've dug completely deep, deep, we can talk about the 5 elements of taste, for the next 3 hours if you want. I mean, of course,
yes,
I love
but
when sweet meets umami. I mean, I could,
yeah,
I'm ensconced in food and wine world,
yeah,
meaning different hours, right? And different friends. It's
different,
another group of friends, right?
different everything.
The wine hang, the food hang, the food, I have a collection of hangs of, friends in all of these worlds who don't necessarily meet, they don't meet. They're all, they're relegated to this, to this, to this, to this. So the ones I hang with in restaurants, could be very different. The
Yeah.
closest that comes is the Manja Quartet, where it's drummers, percussionists, right?
Nice, nice.
Chippinists who
Yeah,
get together and, incorporate the food. But it's a different kind of hang when you go with the food crowd, right?
yeah,
I mean, so there are different nuances, obviously, that
yeah.
happen, in each of those contexts. But everyone asked me, of course, don't you miss it? Don't you miss it? And in the beginning, I thought maybe, but you know what? No, it really has transferred, and it's become another entity now.
Sure, sure.
So now, I tell people, my concerts or my sessions, or in recording studios or stages, and now the concerts are at the table. That's what's happening,
Nice,
right?
nice.
And I see the parallel. I've made that parallel happen all the time. So with how ingredients work, the combination of ingredients, I see that as it could be the drum. I was telling the KoSA guys, who were here just a month ago, about how see that as the drum set, and you're the chef, right? And how many of these ingredients are you incorporating and making meat, and why, right? Why is
Interesting.
sweet offsetting umami, right? Meaning, why is your bass drum doing that with the hi-hat? Right? I mean, we can make these parallels. It's very
Interesting.
easy to do, right? It gets
Yeah.
boring after a certain amount of time. Well, it's should we add a sprinkle of shaker here? Should something, But yeah, it's connected, of course. That's why I'm saying get a visual groove going too. Go to museums,
Yeah.
look at art, get visual art going inside your repertoire of emotions and uh, and synapses. Get that going too. So food is just an extension of that in that way. Food and wine. It really
Right.
started with wine for me 22 years ago, and that's a
Nice,
whole
nice.
long
But
discussion
but the
about
whole
how
thing.
wine did this. But wine begat food in for me. And
Prepared. Yeah, yeah.
I took actually a wine course. I did do a wine study course. I was glad I did. And the guy, first thing he said, gang, wine is not this metaphysical thing. Wine is food. Ding! And it started from that.
Interesting.
Anyway,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
But
So it's just you're using different aspects of the sensory system, but you're activating them, obviously, in a cousinly way, in a related
yeah.
way to the sonic and the visual. right?
Yeah. No, but it's interesting. What's really interesting about this, Gordon, is because you're really the second person that I know who made that transition, a very quick transition in
Mm.
practically your top at your top level. Then you said, okay, now I'm going to switch not gears. I'm going to switch cars. I'm going to
How about
switch.
Bernie Williams? How about Bernie Williams? You know, Bernie Williams is
I,
he's
I
a
don't.
Yankees, New York Yankees center
Okay.
fielder.
Okay.
He so-called retired. You know, they retired pretty early in baseball.
Yes. Yes.
It's not a great parallel, but anyway, he retired. You know, he's playing guitar now. He's a great guitar
Right.
player.
That's
He's
right.
totally
That's
shifted
right.
his life. He's one
Yes.
of he's a busy dude playing,
Guitar.
you know, Latin jazz, shall we say.
Right.
But he's a guitar. He's a guitar player now. He went to Manhattan School of Music, got a degree.
I heard that. Yeah.
Started.
Yeah. Now
In
I
fact,
remember who you are,
my
who you
bro
meant.
non-bro, but bro non-bro, another mother, Danny Gottlieb, in fact, was playing with Bernie for a little while. Anyway,
Nice.
I
But
met Bernie,
I
and
was
we had a
thinking
great chat.
of Bill Bruford.
Yes,
When he left, yes, and I had him on the podcast because it was always gnawing away at me, like why would somebody who's playing yes, and the guy I remember seeing him live when I was a kid, and he was like
yeah,
an incredible, like, he was like another one of the gods. And why
yes,
would you stop when
yes,
you're up there? So those of us who were like working our way to that world, and he
yes.
just stops, like,
How do you?
wait a second,
That,
so it
that's
was
right,
hard for me in the beginning to say to myself and accept it, like, why would
right,
you do that and cheat everybody else and yourself of creating this new
right.
stuff? But then you say, there are reasons, and I was happy to have had that conversation, and then you're good with it, and he's so good with it, it's not even funny, and
Totally.
and, and
Well,
it's
Gary
important for
Bergman is
us.
another great example, actually, if you want to get into that. I
Yeah.
mean, there's someone who nothing negative, you know, his skills had not receded in any way, and decided I'm pulling the plug on this.
And he
So,
went
you know,
and he got a
there's an
PhD.
egotistical thing maybe where you say, "Oh, I wanted to get out on top," you know, and you don't want to
But I
stay
don't think
at the party too long. I mean, that was never my thinking. You know, believe me, that's
yeah.
ridiculous. You know, because I loved playing. I've always loved playing. It was not about that at all. Never, never. I wasn't, you know, cynical about it, or you know, whatever. You know, as George Shearing was like, well, this was a really financial experience playing with you. You know,
But here's that's a good one. But here's another one. I mean, the way I look at it now is, and especially after Bill Bruford, because I really had to satisfy myself, and I'm happy that he was on the podcast. So we spoke about that, and it kind of I threw it in my mind a little bit, and then I realized I said, you know what? We do what we do because we're good at this, or we're working at it at least, and then we
Yeah.
fulfill helpfulness around us for that. And then at one
Yes.
point you say, okay, I, I have enough of this. While I still can. It's not
Yeah.
like I lost an arm, I lost a leg, I lost my mind or something. Then you kind of forced into it. It was the decision is made by you. You say, okay, now I'm going to put myself there and see what other
Right.
good I can do there and enjoy it.
I was
Right?
always a victim of my curiosity. What can I say? I didn't, you know, I tell people, you know, who aspire to be well-rounded, uh, you know, and play a variety of styles, not just one. I said, well, you're going to, you know, be prepared to sleep less than, you know,
Of
those who
course.
only maybe in one, which is unfair to say. It's ridiculous, right? And it's plenty simple to not sleep and be a timpanist. you're, you're getting new heads together. You know, I wouldn't even start with that, but you
Yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
anyway, but I said, you know, you may sleep less because, you know, these worlds will collide. You know, I was never a morning person. So to me, it was always like, you know, an enslavement to try and get to a 10 a.m. rehearsal with, say, the New York Philharmonic. But oh my God. Because, you know, you couldn't just walk in its head. Obviously, you got to be there, you know, at least an hour early. Blah, 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 blah. But, you know, I played a bunch of different things where, you know, like Good Morning America, you got to be there like, at, you know, 4 a.m. for example. And that was actually more fitting for me. I could do that. I was still up.
Just
But, I mean, let's face it, Stevie Wonder might start his recording at midnight, and I won't even touch the joke that would naturally get
of
inserted
course, I'm
there.
thinking.
But anyway, insert jokes, stage left. He started midnight, right? So, think about how that is going to collide with a so-called new music or classical situation, which is beginning in the morning. So, I went through this for years where, the night jams and, my so-called jazz, whatever, jazz were music gigs, whatever they were, might finish at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. In Brazil, they never stopped. Sun was well up, but you're still playing. So, to try and get to a morning rehearsal, oh boy. In fact, never forget, early on with my playing with the Philharmonic, as a very young kid, probably still in school, or maybe just out, I overslept the rehearsal. Oh my God. The one time I did, because I had been playing all night. I can't remember what it was, but I was playing all night. And I know, the alarm clock went off at whatever, 7 a.m., whatever it would have been, 7:30. And I guess I shut it off and went right back to sleep. Oh, God. So
Wow.
the phone, the Philharmonic rehearsals would normally start at 10 a.m. So at about 10:03, my phone rings. It's the contractor. James Chambers, who was one of the great French horn players, with that orchestra, became the contractor. So Jimmy called me Gordon he became very formal. James Chambers, right? He was Jimmy to James Chambers. What happened? And I said, conflict of interest. I'll never forget it. He says, and I said, I'll be right there, man. I'm really sorry. He says, please, could you? So, I ran over there. I didn't live too far from the hall at that point. But, they're going to rub up against one another. And I'll never forget that particular one.
That's a good one.
I did not make a habit of that. I would, force myself to get out of bed and get there, man, But,
But
I fought that fight for, many years.
but I mean,
I'm
one
a
thing
night
for
guy.
one,
I'm a night dude.
yeah. But one thing for
Also from the
sure,
upbringing, like as I was describing with my mom.
yeah, yeah.
It
Oh
was
yeah,
so
yeah.
she would say, life begins at midnight, she would say. Life
Wow.
begins at
And
midnight.
that stayed.
Yeah.
And that stayed.
So I was used to that. Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, Gordon, you did so much that you could feel, 3 lives worth of stuff
It
that you
felt like
did.
that
So
sometimes.
yeah, and
It felt like that.
you've done
That
it.
was me cramming too much, because I didn't want quality to suffer. I definitely did. I want to be able
Yes.
to, produce. I want to feel good about the situation. I mean, integrity was always number one to me, essential.
Absolutely.
So, in the recommendation department, integrity essential, right? The passion and the honesty essential. Don't mail this stuff in, man. Never. So I always believed and always will that it's about the passion you bring and about your living that, right? Expressing that, encouraging that, in fact, right? Those
Yeah.
KoSA dudes, I felt like I was teaching them how to eat. I mean, I wasn't, of course, but in many ways they were being challenged by what they were eating. This is a
Yeah.
guy who's an amazing chef who I adore, in a restaurant called Luthun, Luthun, shameless plug, East Village, and it's
Okay.
it's a world hybrid cuisine, and
Okay.
there you have Amazon chilies, and you have tacos, and you have nori, and you've got Dum Chunk from Vietnam. You've got elements from a lot of different cultures that he incredibly fuses. I mean, it's
Wow.
it's that's the perfect type of restaurant for someone like me, who loves these combinations, who has lived these. That's my kind of joint. Some people hate that, fusion.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Or
fusion. India meets Vietnam meets Japan meets France. Oh no.
no,
But
there
yeah,
is so, but
but if
there is
it's
so much,
balanced and
yeah,
genius, come on.
and there's so much common ground in food, as in music. There's 7 notes, right?
Come on.
Food, same.
Well, there may be some other scales on the planet, but yeah, for the most part, Western derived music, it's going to be built on, certain distances between these pitches. And, we won't even talk about individual tunings and whatever,
Right.
But yes, for the most part, yeah, exactly. You got a very similar situation you're coming from. How do you fuse it? So this restaurant, uh, that's like my home turf. I never cook, by the way. I never cook, and if I feel like I don't know. The choices are endless. In
Yes.
this town, I'm
Of
grateful
course,
for that.
New
So
York is New
I don't
York.
even
Yeah.
feel the need to travel as much as I used to. By the way, so I'm limiting that post pandemic. For sure.
Sure.
I'm limiting that. It's just a pain in the what to move around. But anyway, the Earth's got me covered, man. It's incredible the amount of cuisines, more than ever, really more
Sure.
than ever, more expensive than ever, but more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So life has been a gift in many ways. It's allowed me to do this.
Yeah. And well
This
deserved,
this shift, if you will,
Yeah.
right?
And it's a shift with the next Gordon, next and it's
Yeah.
totally cool. And if you're happy with it, and then you make other people happy with it, because it also, I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, at some point we have to move over anyway, right? In that music world. And I
That's
think there's
exactly right.
there's part of that that's kind of necessary. It's like, I used to do a regular TV show. I used to do like all of us. But then that new TV show, well, you're not going to get called because the guy who's the band leader in that show doesn't even know who you are. He didn't go to
That's
school with
exactly.
you. You're
Yeah,
not
there you go.
22 years old, and
Yeah,
you
you're
weren't
with
even.
your colleague, exactly. You're with your chums, right? That's
And
how it
that's
is,
what,
right?
yeah, and
Of
that's what
course.
you did when you were there, because you knew the guys. You went to school with them or you played with them, and so
Sure.
the cycle changes, and you have to make room. You have to move forward. Now, do you make room and create your own stuff, or do you make room and go to something else that is of great interest to you, as you have done?
Yeah.
That's Your
Well, I
Honor.
guess
I
part
rest
of
my
this is
case.
exactly part of it is just the natural law of that and timing, right? I mean, I'm 75 at this point.
You're
I'm in
looking good, man.
the last chapters. Fine, thank you. But I because I live young. I definitely live young.
Well, listen, you still have a
Right?
long way to go. I mean, look, Arnie, 90. Listen,
Oh yeah.
that's
Oh,
15 years.
I mean, that's my hero. And if I could do that, I don't know. I've put a lot of miles on this 75, but I'm at
Yes.
the point where I've earned enough, and it's allowed me to do this, on a practical level. So I'm just following the muse, right?
There you go.
It really is that. And like I said, I'm a victim of my own curiosities, and they are always many. And like I said, so many happy detours occurred, right? Right.
And
So I
they're
didn't
all
see
good.
that,
And and they're all good, and it's forward motion for you. And and Gordon, the
always.
thing is, we could speak for another 2 weeks, and but you know, maybe we'll have to do another one on a specific, because this
Happily,
is too.
if you want to hone in on something, then sure, of
Yeah,
course.
no, this
In
is
a lot of ways,
interest.
we could take this, of course, happily.
Yes. You know, and we've done it before, and we can do it again. But
Oh, big time.
I wanted to really thank you for taking the time to meet up with me and share this, because for me it was important. It's been a long time that I've been thinking about this, because you're one
Uh,
of those people who made those decisions. You've had an incredible journey so far, and now you're on this other journey, which is actually a continuation of the other.
yeah,
So it was
for
important to
sure.
me to to have this conversation, and I thank you for it, Gordon.
Hey, thank you for getting it.
Yes. And as I always say, to be continued.
And you know that my line is TBC, to be continued. We have the
Really?
same one, brother. I have been using that for years. Look at us.
Wow.
TBC. I know. TBC.
I didn't.
I know. We did it again, man.